approach that Workday kind of takes in this kind of thing is kind of just like a wizard based, kind of the same way as like that proposed compensation piece. So today, what we'll really walk through is kind of how do you hire a contingent worker, and then if you need to convert them to an employee, how you can do that. But you could also, and that uh, encapsulates the job change, termination. I don't think we've walked through, but like termination is another thing. So just like I said, there are complex processes, and you have many different components, and they include multiple different orgs, right? Like when you're changing a job, HR and payroll, as well as IT get involved. Same thing with termination, IT specifically, right? Like making sure all access has been removed. And then the thing to note is like how in Workday can you easily tell who's a contingent worker, and the way you can do that is it's signified at the end of their name. And I don't know if we've seen that, but we'll look at that in the tenant. Is there's like that C after the contractor's name, and in Workday we just call them contingent workers, but right, these temporary workers are referred to as contractors as well. And then the biggest thing is like, and I know we don't really talk about payroll as much on this in this specific module, but payment for a contractor is not sent through payroll. They go through the payroll interface and then sent to whatever third party. And then you can run this specific report. So at this point, maybe I'll jump into the tenant. You run this specific report to see who's a contingent worker and see how many contingent worker types you have in the system. And this is a delivered report. So there's many delivered reports, right, that I highlight that are important to go ahead and see or remember. And these are one of them. So let's go ahead, hop into a tenant. Yeah, so there's several ways. That was just kind of like showing the easiest way. So let's see. So contingent worker types, let's just select. So these are in the system already as kind of contingent worker types. So contractor, temporary, and vendor. So let's just click OK on all of them. Okay, I was like, no, wait, there's nothing. So here's several, right? And here's that C that we're talking about. So just if I'm looking at this immediately, I know, okay, this. But if I go to the person's profile, I mean, there's several different ways. For me, I generally just use the C. But the other way is, once this loads, and what I'm trying to go to is the person's profile. And what you'll see is, you'll see contingent worker type, contractor here, right? There's other things, contract, start date, contract end date, and then contingent worker ID. So for me, it's always been these specific variables. So if the C wasn't, like the C is always going to be visible, but at the record type, and then, the other thing I wanted to show, let me move this over, is the contingent worker ID. We kind of talked about it, right, for employee ID, contingent worker ID, and then I'll make sure to highlight, but once let's say we take Kelly Crawford and we change her into an employee, her EMPL ID will be the same, but now it's not going to have the reference type as contingent worker ID. It's going to be employee ID. And then this other thing that I want to show, and I'll come back to all of this when we go through an example. Hopefully it'll let me go through an example, but integration IDs, UIDs, we kind of talked about it before. So all the different IDs, reference IDs that this person have will be listed here. And this instance ID is what we call it, or a WID, which is kind of important in integrations. All of these IDs, right? That's why it's under integration IDs, is when this person will change to an employee, this instance ID will change. So if you were to put in this WID and like now Kelly Crawford is an employee and you're using these WIDs, it will only reference the contingent worker aspect of her, but not the new employee aspect of her. So this one, right? It ends in an E, this one is a D. So, you know, that's why it's so long. So everything just kind of has a snapshot and you can reference it like for web services and integrations through a WID. And you could get at everything. So, you know, for me, I've seen people use WIDs. I've seen people, right, like get at the same information through other integration IDs. So just want to kind of highlight it. And then I'm hopeful, like once we get to the integration piece, we'll definitely go into it in more detail. But just want to kind of say it since we're in this space right now. Let's see. Okay. Anything else that I wanted to say about this? Okay, let me go ahead and see if it's on my next slide. All right, so this was just in case if the demo doesn't work. So let me go ahead and let's see, is ZaranTech still here? Nope, got refresh. And I guess the UI is changing. Yep, so it's not here. So let me find a different one. I don't want to mess with somebody else. Somebody might be. Okay. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead. Okay. Let me see if I could just edit the existing rather than going through all of them. Okay, I'll just create a new position and let's see what issues I run into. No date. And I'm going to leave everything else blank. What I want to do is make sure that I can hire a contingent worker. Oh, all right. Let me go down to a lower level so I can really mess with all this. Okay, let me see if I can log in as Logan McNeil really quick. What I was trying to do in the tenant was basically, you have to make sure that the position you're allowed to either it be employee or contingent, as long as it's set up to be contingent. The other option that you have on the related action, like when I went to staffing, it was like hire employee, then it would be contract contingent worker, and you would select that, and then and I think I need to go, yeah. And then what you would do is go ahead, and this is where you're kind of, this is screen. Give me 1 second, I may have missed a screen. Just make sure. No, I did. Okay, so but basically you go in, you say contract contingent worker, and then you have to do the same kind of steps as you do when you're hiring an employee, right? If the pre-hire doesn't exist, you create that pre-hire, you go ahead, once you put in all the details for that pre-hire, which is the same, it has to be like their name, you put in their name, you put in one piece of contact information, you click OK, and then you say hire, right? Contract this specific contingent worker. And in this case, like, let's say it was John Smith that I had created that pre-hire for, and then you have to put in his contract start date, and then you go ahead, same thing, reason, the position, like since I'd be going off the position, this would just get auto-filled. And then you could say what type of contingent worker he is, right? Like, so the types that are in the tenant that are available. So you'd have those options like contractor, temporary and stuff. And then you could tie the job profile, the time type, the location, and then there's some other information. Let me just make sure. Yeah. Oh, I know. I know. I knew I was going to run into issues. So let me go to this actually. Create the document. So I spent a little time on this just in case. So I was looking for this. All right. Is this good enough for you guys to see this document?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Okay. So we went through that part. We talked about the C, the IDs, great. And then this is how it should look, right? If you have the right um, uh, like worker type on there, then just ignore this other stuff. But you'd have this contract contingent worker. You click that, and this is the screen that you'd get, right? And very similar to that employee one, and you'd put in just you put in, if you were searching for John Smith and he was already in the system as a pre-hire, great. Otherwise, it's the same button, create pre-hire, new pre-hire, and then you go ahead, same tabs, right? Like just like the employee one, just like I was saying, legal name information, contact information. Let's say we filled out all of this, John Smith, and now he'll show up, right? Just as a card and into the supervisory or wherever I was just kicking off that related action. But you could always put in the task name as well, contract contingent worker, and then you would end up on this screen. So through the related actions are actually typing in that task. And then in one way, this is nice because I don't run into all those BP issues and all that stuff by taking the screenshots. It just takes a little bit more time, but isn't as dynamic as going into the tenant. So putting in all that information, and then there's one more screen if we, oh, I missed it, but there's more information around contract details. And let me see if I just in the tenant do this. Forget about Logan McNeil. Actually, create new pre-hire shouldn't kick off any BP, so let's just go through this. Just so I could show you guys the next screen. Great, getting the same stuff. And then, it's because I didn't go through. Okay, great. And then, create purchase order. Oh, I know. Okay. This is set up a little bit differently. But it was supposed to be just focusing on this contract start date. And then once I click OK, the person should get hired into that specific position. And then just the same things, right, like that I was showing you earlier. You have that C to identify it easily that they're a contractor or a contingent worker. You have the ID as long as you have it set up to show, and then contingent worker type shows, and then IDs. So this is important to go back to, just like I was talking about, like this WID is specifically tied to this specific worker being a contractor, and then his specific worker ID. So let's say that you're, so I just feel like there's a number of ways, like Workday, like as you've probably seen, right? Like to get at the data, they give you a number of different ways. WID was just their initial way of doing it when they first started off with Workday. And then they realized, right, like customers want to be able to, because this is going to be system generated and you can't change it. This one you can change. You can come in after the fact and go ahead and change this ID. You can change the type of it, the name of it, anything you could change in this area. You won't be able to change the WID. It's always going to be static, and you can always reference it to get back at this. But when you try to pull information, like let's say I know that I need IDs for John Smith, when you just go ahead and use that appropriate web service to pull all the IDs that are in the system for John Smith, you'll get the WID, you'll get contingent worker ID, and whatever else you have associated with this person. Like this should be your system of record, but you have an identity manager or whatever, like what is it? I think it's called identity manager, IDM. And you go ahead and you're having that kind of generate the IDs, and something happened. I don't know, some sort of glitch. I mean, you don't necessarily see it happening this way, but let's say you didn't want Workday to generate these IDs. This one is going to get generated no matter what, but you didn't want Workday to generate like employee ID. You would have your whatever that identity manager is that is generating the IDs update this to say update contingent or employee ID to be a certain ID. Yeah, you're
But
going to be like, there's going to be validations, right? Like if I edit the ID and I'm trying
Mhm.
to do a duplicate, it's going to check for a duplicate. I'm just like, if you don't set up the sequence generator to
Mhm.
like, it's not going to know what your validation, any further validations than that, right? Like if you don't, okay, I don't know, like, and it just let me, right? It's not looking at
Yeah, that's it.
specifically, yeah, but I think, you know, like the only validation that you're going to get. So to see this WID, even though I did, let's see, maybe I'm wrong in this because, you know, as I was mentioning, a lot of things change, but let's see. I think, yeah, you're never going to be able to update the WID. It'll be, and if this person had multiple IDs on here, I don't know, um, I'm trying to think of other ones that they would have on here. You know, I'd be able to update those IDs through the UI and through the web service, but it's not going to, even though I might have sequence generator set up in this tenant, it's not going to look at those rules. The only validation that I know of that it's going to do over here is, yep, you are.
Okay. So
So,
you can either search by the instance ID or by the employee
mhm,
ID. So both
yes,
give you the same information. Okay.
yeah. And the other thing that I wanted to see, because this will help us in our discussion. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that's up so that way when I'm going through that example, I can get to it. Okay, so, all right, so now I'll go into like, I want to go ahead, you know, and they do this right a lot, like, and I feel like for my company, now they're starting to hire a lot of people in certain roles that previously they would just hire as employees. They're just hiring them as contractors just to see if it's a good fit. And then they're going to go ahead and change them over to employees. So the way you do that is through the job change, and you would select convert employee. So we're still using that John Smith example here. You go ahead and again, you know, if I wanted to just go to this specific task, I can. I went through it through the related actions, convert to employee, same supervisory org. It knows exactly who I'm talking about, John Smith. I click OK, and then just the normal prompts, right, that you get to see for when you're just hiring an employee. So let's say this wasn't a contingent worker before, but for your position, you're hiring an employee, all the prompts, right, looks the same. Then there's this section, and I guess I was confusing it with this, is the end contract details section, right? So it's going to talk, it's going to pull in the position that you're referencing, and then you're going to say, when do you want this contract to end, right? And the last day of work and the contract end date, you know, can be the same. And then the reason, you just put in a reason, and then you could go ahead, submit. Now, John Smith is in there as an employee, right? Same, and let's go up. So it was 23134. In this case, like they're not getting a new ID, but just like what Sriram you were saying, right? Like you might want them to get a new ID. You could just go ahead and edit it or go through the web service. Generally, I've seen it just go through an EIB using the web service to update it if they need to go ahead and update, but you always have that option to edit it easily in the UI. And then the thing that I wanted to show is what you'll
I
see.
didn't.
So all this information, right, gets updated. So before it was saying contract, now it's saying employee because now they're an employee. And what you'll see is that the WID is different. So now if I go ahead and I search this WID, I will go to John Smith as the employee. But if I had searched for, and I could, in the same tenant, right, go and use the other WID, it'll point me to the person, a person being a contractor before. Oh yeah, I can't because I would need that position again and all those. Okay, any questions? it was just this, right? So it's gonna inherit a lot of the stuff, the job profile, like all that stuff
Mhm.
was initially, right, when we created that contractor, it's going to move it over. The only thing is like now what is the employee type?
Okay.
And then of course the hire date, and then the ending of the contract. If you wanted to put that in, but the last day of work you kind of need to put in.
The only thing I can think of is, let's say, you know, your hire date is effective probably, hypothetically, probably 3 or 4 days from now, and you're ending the contract as of today. Maybe that's when it'll help.
Yeah,
So
let's
you
see if
have a gap in between.
I'm just going to try to get at the documentation. Okay, let's see if it should give us like a field level description. Oh, okay. Converting employee to employee, you have the contract end date must be earlier than the hire date. Um, position. What was that? Oh, last date automatically populates from the contract end date, but you can change it. And then where was the hire date? And select a reason. Date must be earlier than the hire date. So I guess like, okay, I think that's all I have to really say on this topic. The other topic I'm more excited about, the reporting stuff. Because I don't think then I'll have to mess around too much with security. And then hopefully I'll go into more detail about IDs and everything with the EIB and the integration, and we'll get to maybe test out some of the things that are unclear. And this is what I know I mentioned it very briefly, but when I was talking about like a task wizard, like all these kind of job changes generally seem to go through these task wizards. Determination is one of them. All right, I can't go in as Logan McNeil, but the thing that I wanted to do is when you said effective date, there is no effective date on this.
How do you put that person as inactive? Yeah, and see the termination date, but how will I know whether the person is inactive or active on it? What tells me now for this employee when he became inactive? That's his termination date. But what tells me when he has become inactive? As of which date did he become inactive?
So inactive meaning like, can you guys see this screen about reporting and custom fields?
Yes.
Okay, great. So reporting, we've been kind of touching on it by me running reports or telling you like, oh, here are the reports that are kind of in Workday to help you navigate different things, look at different pieces of information, specifically tasks and other things. So reports in Workday are defined really for or designed really for the functional user, right? Like to easily just go in, do stuff without having to lean on a reporting expert. I think that was the case earlier, but more and more I'm realizing like as Workday is developing like the depth, you do need kind of more people that are really not a jack of all trades, but really focused on specific aspects of it. But you could definitely just go in, start in, and build specific reports, very simple reports, quite easily. And they're kind of changing that too. There's something called what they're calling discovery boards that I think they just launched 1 or 2 releases ago. I haven't played around with it. I think it's right now in just kind of like the beginning stages, but they're trying to even make it easier and easier rather than going through this UI. But I haven't played around with it, so I can't really go in depth in it. But it's more about like being able to drag and drop specific things, and your customer has to opt in for, I think, some sort of agreement. Also, I don't remember if it's Prism or Innovation Agreement, something else. So, but I'm sure, like in the next year or two, as they start building out more stuff and really improving, I think what they're trying to do is improve the reporting aspect so that way it doesn't require a functional user to really be like the subject matter expert in this stuff, because as you can imagine, you want to probably report on so many specific things, and it's great that you're able to access all this data, but sometimes creating the report, and you'll get to see it, like some of the CRFs that are, I'm sorry, Ramesh, I think it's you, could you mute? Um, like to get at the data, sometimes like which is great, like there's so many report fields, but then you have to click into each one to kind of see which one you want. So it just can sometimes be a little time consuming. But these reports, of course, like if you just want to run something ad hoc, it's very useful, but then also it's really nice. Like if let's say you have you need to report changes in benefits, right? Like right now it's open enrollment going on, and you just want to run this report, but this data really needs to be going through an integration to another system. You can set up the reports to show the changes or to show your employee elections and stuff, and have that information sent in an integration. So I'm just mentioning it, but we'll go into more detail in a little bit. And then this part I'm going to skip over. I have a better slide for that. So there's certain prefixes, right? Like I just used WID, I've been using BP. So the ones that kind of help is if you are searching for specific reports, you use RD colon. If you're searching for definitions, then you use this, and I'll show you in a little bit what that kind of means. And if you're searching for specific fields, you would just use this prefix. And then there's Workday delivers what they call standard reports. These are ones that are just out of the box and customers can use. The thought with these standard reports is hopefully it covers like 80% of your use cases, but then the hope is like if there's anything additional that you want to do with these reports, you can go ahead and copy these reports, or just go ahead and create a custom report and just modify it as needed. So let's go ahead, look at another report to kind of view the reports that Workday delivers. Where did my screen go? Easy, simple report that I'll be creating, and then I'll go ahead and into kind of, it's called advanced, but it's called advanced for a different reason. But it's very easy to kind of navigate the UI. But in terms of knowing what specific fields you'll need and that kind of stuff, it's going to require a little bit of testing to make sure that, and I'll walk through that as well. I think where it gets complicated is like, you can do a lot, right? And we're just going to touch the surface here, but there's a lot of training that Workday does. They even have, or I think they used to have, because I used to attend them a lot, is office hours with reporting experts. So you could ask your questions to them. And there's very interesting ways at which you can get at the data, show the data and stuff like that. But, that's kind of outside the scope of this, but this will just show you that there's how to get at the data initially. And then, yeah, there's very complex ways that you can build your report and stuff. Of course, the more complexity that you add to it, the harder it is to maintain it, but there's very savvy reporting experts. But if you just need to do kind of like the day-to-day stuff, which most organizations are kind of doing, you just need to spend a little time just kind of playing around with it. And especially if you're joining, so if you're working at a partner, there's a lot of tools that Workday kind of gives the partners, right? Because they want to make sure that they're successful. So you'll kind of have like tools. There's a separate area on community that you get to use based on if you're working with a partner. And then if you're already working at a customer, most of the time, unless they are just starting off, they probably already have the reports. You just kind of need to fine tune them, right? So yeah, I feel like going back to your question and just answering it in a nutshell, you don't need to be that savvy, and you have the tools if you need to do anything complex. It just requires a little time.
Okay.
Okay. So so here, like, I just typed in Workday standard reports, and then if I wanted to go at specific information, personal data, I can just go ahead, leverage that category, and I'll get to see all the different reports that I can use. And then, I get oh, can you guys still hear me? It says my internet connection is unstable.
Yeah, you were breaking in and out.
Okay, hopefully it's better now. So here are all the different names of reports, right? They give descriptions. Something that I've realized that they're starting to do is update the descriptions and descriptions not only for the reports, but also for the fields that are on these reports or the ones that we can leverage. Before it used to be they didn't have, maybe for it's kind of pretty old. I feel like they're kind of improving their standards around these reports and realizing like that's really where the power of kind of Workday and it being on one system is the reporting piece. So you'll see some of the descriptions may be changing. They may be deprecating some of these reports, and you can't copy them anymore. But they'll let you know that, hey, and the deprecation process is it was 18 months. And what I've generally seen is like several years before they actually take it away, because I remember hearing on a customer forum one time that what they're trying to do is like they don't just when they say deprecate that I'm going to deprecate something, they put in a lot of time looking into which customers are using it, and also um, making sure that they have something that the customer can use in lieu of the deprecated report. And they don't deprecate it until everybody starts using something new. I guess they have some way of finding out who's using what aspect in Workday. So they probably have further logging and reporting built in. And then there's two different types, report writer and espresso. And I feel like I had a good slide for this. One second. But let me just go back to this. So two types, and then I'll get back to that. And then, another nice thing is, and we'll get into it probably in the next class, is that you can schedule reports. So let's say you want every Monday, somebody in your org wants to see, I don't know, who all the new hires are, right? Or every the first of the month and stuff like that. You can just go ahead, set up the report, and then run it on a schedule, and whoever you want to go ahead and share that with, you can go ahead and do that. And then domain, like what do folks kind of need access to on the report. You'll hear this a lot when you're first kind of playing around with reports is report writer. They kind of lump this into report writer. All that is Workday's custom reporting tool. So it's built into Workday, and you just need to make sure that whoever's playing around with reports either has access or creating custom reports. So they need to have access to this report writer. Like if it's a user-based security group, just make sure that they have access to report writer domain when they're creating custom reports. You can also designate report admin to their access. So that way, what they'll have, being able to manage all custom reports and that kind of stuff. So like I said, around where I was mentioning Workday delivered reports versus Expo. This is report writer and this is Espresso. Now, what does that mean? Espresso is kind of Workday's proprietary language and all that stuff. And for this one, what that means is I can't copy these reports. But anything that's built with report writer, I can copy. Both of them I can run. So let's go ahead and just do this one. Does he not have access? So let me open up another tab. Let's look at this one. Oh, and one more thing before I actually, or maybe I'll come back to that. Let me write it down. So here's that report. And there's prompts on these reports. So I have to say, I'm looking for an address change. And let's go from here to here. And if I didn't put in anything, it would just search for like ever, whatever the start of any this tenant is probably. Okay, but I'm not finding anything. So this is the Workday delivered one, right? And it's done through Report Writer. And what I can do is, let's say this, all this information I need to send to another integration or downstream system that's keeping track of or needs to know about address changes, right? But I don't need maybe all this information, right? Maybe all I care about, like maybe the downstream system for whatever reason, doesn't need this stuff as long as I have employee ID, and then maybe not even the work address. I don't know. But what I can do is, okay, this is like a lot of information. I just need very specific piece of information. So let me go ahead and, yeah, I would go ahead and look at the, what is it called? The events, that find events report, look for specifically address changes, and then see, do I have any during the time frame that I'm requesting? If I do, then it's most likely a security access, that I don't have access to the specific information that this report is pulling, then I just need to debug with security, right? But then if it's more that, hey, I don't have any address changes that took place, or and I know there should be, then it's starting to look at BPs and being like, did it actually complete? Did people take the necessary steps to actually complete them? And then of course the third thing being, if there were no address changes, then okay, this is valid. So this is that perfect example, right? Like, on the report, I don't see these do not use, but do not use means that they're deprecating this, and that there's probably another thing that I'm supposed to be using in lieu of these fields that are on there. So Workday probably sent out information saying like you should be using a different report or no longer kind of use this for whatever reason. So let's go ahead and look at something different. Sure. I'm probably not going to get anything back on this one either, but let's go ahead and try it. Can I just... Okay, so I still didn't get anything here, but let's go ahead. What I wanted to show is that this is a Workday delivered report, but the type is report writer. So I should be able to copy it. And what I can do is copy it, and I can change the name. They will always append copy, but let's say I want to change it to Zara, and then I'll go into this stuff in a little bit. But what I want to show is now I can see all those fields, right, that are getting pulled in the actual Workday delivered one. And I can, maybe it's that I need to override the column heading. I want my own kind of flavor of this. So I can do that. I can add additional fields. I can remove fields and then go ahead, save this, right? So that's what that's allowing me to do. The other thing that I wanted to point out was the difference between report definition and just report. So when I was searching for this report, let me go here. We changed the UI in preview, so it looks very different.
is that change delivered by Workday, or is it that these people have changed it? The UI?
No. It's delivered by Workday. So remember how in the just last week it looked very different, right? Just the search. Now I think.
You're going back to PeopleSoft type. PeopleSoft is like that.
Oh really? Okay.
Yes.
Oh really? This way?
Yes.
Oh wow! I didn't know
You guys
that.
are
That's so
going back to
interesting.
PeopleSoft. Yep.
And it's funny because I feel like Workday is expanding a lot, right? When I'm talking to some of the folks that I know there, and they're like, it doesn't look the same as what it did. Like before, there were a lot of PeopleSoft people, but now it looks very, very different. Like people from all over. It's not. So it's interesting that they are going back to PeopleSoft, but it might be just PeopleSoft consultants are more in the product. And I guess a lot of people are moving from Oracle too, from what I heard. So, which probably were ex PeopleSoft people too. So that's very interesting. But before there used to be that option for all. I'm guessing I'll have to see how to get all, which changes things. Before you could go to, you'd see report and then you'd see report definition. And now you can't see that, which is interesting. I wonder how many customers will complain about that. But let's go here again. Just choose any date because it wasn't showing me anything. And then what you can do, maybe this guy just doesn't have access. I wonder if they took it away. I know, I'm sorry, I'm talking out loud. I'm wondering if they just took away that access or what. One thing to note is, and it's, when you're playing around with reports, is it's not going to allow you to save two reports with the same name. So they'll append copy on there. And then if it's, I think it's a very interesting way that they do it. So if I didn't change this to anything else and I decided to make another copy, it would be copy, and sometimes copy one, copy two. So it just is very interesting the way that they, yeah, that's this tab right here. And you could say if you want specific default values, and we'll definitely get into this. I think this requires a little bit more time to look at it. But yeah, so this was just to right now just show that you can copy a delivered report, which is like the most powerful thing, because the last thing you want to do is start from scratch, right? Like hopefully you can, I feel like 80% of the time for just normal day to day, you can always find a delivered report and kind of tweak it. And then, for the more complex and more one-off things, that's where you might want to start from scratch. But even that, I feel like sometimes there's a report out there that you could just start as a starting point, make sure you copy it. And then other things, these espresso ones, these are the ones Workday delivered, but you're not gonna be. Okay, so I have all this information, right, showing about this person. Now I'm gonna copy, great, and it's an advanced report, awesome. And I'll go into what's simple and advanced in my examples in a bit. So just like what you were saying, I want something additional to everything that's listed here. Oh, where did I put it? Okay, here. I added it in the middle of the report for whatever reason, and I have it tied to phone numbers. I can go ahead and anything that's part of this business object, and I'll go over like how all these relationships are built, but I can add something else, right? There's nothing stopping me from adding additional fields on this report. So this met most of my use case, but I need that additional fields. I can go ahead in my copy, add it. So copy in order to change anything on the report, being adding of additional fields or removing fields or changing the prompts or the sorting or a number of things, right? Depending on all of these options here, I can change that. and I'll walk through each of those options. But I don't know which parts you guys missed, so sorry if I'm saying the same thing. So when you're doing temporary, it's just 7 days that it's active. After that, it goes inactive, and then you can use a separate task to say delete the report um, from the tenant. So it just kind of helps with that. So generally, temporary reports I just do for testing purposes, or if there's kind of sensitive information in there that I'm trying to pull that I don't want anybody else to see that report. So I'll just create a temporary, but yeah, that's the only thing that it's doing. And I think the thing is, like, again, I don't have that PeopleSoft experience, and of course you do, but I think it's like, and this is what I think I've mentioned in the past too, like I feel like the folks that kind of struggle initially with this is the folks that have a background and a pretty experienced background, right? Like it seems like you guys have been doing it for quite some time, is to make that transition to this initially, because you're used to, right, like change, and I mean this in the best way possible because I'm even experiencing it now, right? Like as things are changing, it's hard to keep up with all the changes, and you just get used to certain things, right? And to move on to a different system is a little bit harder, and this one has its own nuances, its own things. But you know, I don't know PeopleSoft, but it seems like it is a little bit easier there, but you can. And I just want to make sure that I'm not overlooking this part is, yes, Workday delivers these reports, but there's nothing stopping you from creating whatever report you want to. And I'm going to get to that. I guess like I was just trying to go through this report to show you a couple of things, and then it's about creating a custom report from scratch.
Okay.
Yeah. And what I'm trying to show you is what this espresso one looks like and why, let's see this one, why you can't really, why they don't let you, what is it called? Copy this one. Changes. I'm open probably doesn't have everything. Okay, so this is the espresso report, and then you'll see, right? Like there's no report option like the way I was getting on the other one, the copy or anything like that. It just is, you know, there's no related actions there. This one is going directly to Logan McNeil. I'm just trying to find a good one. Give me 1 second. Oh yeah. Work contact information for worker. Each one has these prompts. Okay. And you'll see, right, like this goes away a little bit from the way standard reports kind of look like, the ones that are written in Report Writer. They're just grids. These are a number of grids kind of on a page, right? And you can even take an action off of it, which is, of course, different from the Report Writer ones. But this information, if you're going to look at it, you can, of course, look at it through the report. Generally, where I would go is just go directly to Logan McNeil, look at her contact information, and I should be able to see all of that over there, right? Related to work. Here's all that information. Okay, so that's the piece that I wanted to cover on that. And then, oh, the last thing that I wanted to mention here, to just show you again, many different ways to get at the same information, right? Like I went through looking at all the standard reports, but if I wanted to come here at sitemap and navigate to the same thing, so what was I looking at? Person data. personal data. Here's all the reports, but it doesn't give me all the information that I was seeing there, right? But if you wanted to see what is the personal data in terms of the reports that I kind of Workday delivered and tied to personal data category, you could see that through here as well.
What
All
does reports and tasks mean? What does tasks mean in the report section?
right. So these two columns here.
Yeah,
Okay, so reports are, just like I said, reports. But
right.
then the tasks is like, I want to actually change work contact information. So when I do this, this is the task to change the work contact information for someone.
Oh,
So all the tasks. So, initially I feel like a lot of the place where you'll live is like, okay, I need to do something with personal data. And of course, you could keep on playing around here in the search and trying different things until you get to the right one. But these are all the tasks that are associated with personal data to actually do something, right? Edit information, update information, print information. And this is just pulling the data out of the system, the reports. So that's all it is.
It just threw me off because when you were in the report section, and I was like, well, what
Mm,
is task doing here?
got it. Got it. Yeah. So all I wanted to do is like, again, emphasizing like there's a number of ways to get to the same information. So here's that task. Okay, let me see. And I think I've emphasized this, but I probably threw the conversation off is just, again, the Workday delivered reports, the hope is that it covers kind of 80% of your use case. And the best practice that I've seen is kind of going in and seeing like, okay, I have a certain requirement that I need to report on something or an integration needs certain pieces of information. It's like, what kind of reports are kind of already out there and how do I need to fine tune it through copying? But I'm gonna go through this other stuff in a little bit. Okay, so this is kind of going back to the whole object thing, and Ramesh, what you were saying, right, is that Workday goes ahead and figures out, and I guess it seems like in PeopleSoft, it doesn't do that, but it helps build kind of, it already does the relationship building behind the scenes, right? So a worker has roles assigned to them, they have benefit elections, they have position, they have address, they have comp events. And the way it works is you can do like one, you can't do more than, so I'd have to go to the worker, go to the position, and then go to the job profile. I can't go directly from worker to job profile in reporting. And we'll talk about that when we get to the more advanced reporting piece. But generally, you'd have to go from worker to the position, get the information in the position. But just talking about related objects, right? Worker has a relationship to the position, worker has a relationship to the address, worker has a relationship to the comp events. And there's certain pieces of information that are on the worker, but in order to find information about the position, I need to hop over to the position object and get all the information that's tied to the position. Same thing with, let's say, this benefit elections that this worker has. Hop over and get all the information around the benefit elections. And it'll make more sense as I'm going through this. Are we okay if I go a little bit longer? And so, this report definition, so you have the report output, right? Which is just, the normal report, but this definition, the way the report is actually configured, the fields that are tied, the like the information on the report, not the report output, is what we call report definition. You the business object is how Workday, of course, stores the data, and then there's fields, right? Like every specific piece of data that's on like contact, right, or address. All those specific fields they call class report fields, and that's how you can get at the data. Business object, and then there's class report fields. And then maybe this will help. This is where I just put this slide in because I felt like it helps other people that are used to tables and all that kind of stuff. And I think like, I'm going to go out on a limb. I feel like you could do the same thing. You just have to, it takes time
Probably,
to get
probably,
savvy, right?
probably. Yeah,
In this,
yeah,
like
yeah.
the people that know it, like I love kind of, um, whenever I've been on a project and there's been a reporting expert, it's been amazing. Like just being able to see like what they could get at that,
Yeah.
would take me some time because I don't, every project, like I'm kind of an SME in a different thing. So I feel like I'm a jack of all trades. And of course, if I spend time on something for a little bit, then you can figure it out. And the nice thing is that there's maybe the ramp up time, I guess, in PeopleSoft wasn't too bad. There is a little bit of ramp up time when dealing with reports.
That's why we can pull whatever information we want.
Okay, but I'm glad like this slide resonates and has the impact that I was looking for. That you know it's probably just called differently for whatever reason, but it's almost kind of right. Like it seems like kind of the same thing. And so business object is the table, report data source is kind of the view, the report fields is those columns, the business related business object is the child table. So that one hop away that I was saying is going through like whatever your primary business object is, that table that you've built, I guess, and then it's tying it to a child table, then tying it to the next child table. You can't go to the secondary child table straight from the initial table. So that's kind of what it is. And then let's say we're specifically talking about a worker. The instance of that worker is the row. So in my case, right, like I'm pulling data for Logan McNeil. Logan McNeil's contact information is the instance. And then for the next worker, that's another instance. That's what we call it. And then, and Ramesh, I will come back to your report data source question, but you could have the business object being a worker, but the report data source, right? You might just want, yes, there's so many workers in all the whole tenant, but maybe you just want just people that are retirees, right? Like, so you can use the report data source, all retort retirees, report data source, all workers, or report data source, my direct report. So kind of filtering down kind of the view rather than just, kind of picking everyone and then trying to afterwards kind of filter down, which kind of helps with the performance, right? So if I just did all workers across the tenant and not distinguishing active workers or terminated workers and all this stuff, you're kind of sifting through all this data, which will take time. So things just to be performant and for you to get the output quicker or really get at the population that you're looking for, there's additional data sources. Okay, and then the report fields, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but you see these little icons off to the side. I think I have another slide. Yeah, so you have these class report fields, and you'll see that whenever we pull up a specific field, there is an icon associated with it. And over here, so the T is for text. And when you click on the related action, so this is a Workday delivered postal code, right? And it even says Workday delivered, and it's on the global address business object. And then here's the field type text, right? And then, so that's just a string of characters. And I'm trying to see if any other ones are on here. So these are all text. But going back to this, you have the $sign, which is for currency. You have a Boolean one, true or false. You have this one, which is just numeric. And then you have this one, which is the calendar one, which is a date. So all of these are considered simple class report fields. And then these ones is like, this is a, one node to one node is just a single instance. This one is a multi-instance where it's one to many. And I had an example, one second. So one-to-one relationship would be going from a person to a position, right? person can only have one position in the system, and then one to many would just be, you know, for me, like, or Logan McNeil has 3 dependents, and you could get at those 3 dependents that way, and this is self-referencing. And let me see. Okay. Let me make sure I covered everything I wanted to. Okay. So that's that. Any questions about these slides that I just presented? Oh, and another thing that I guess I should say with these simple fields and this object, what you'll see in these reports, and since this report has a lot of it, let me go back to this one. Let me just run it. So you'll see that there were something, are all of these tests? No, some of these are single instances. Okay, great. Let me go ahead, run it. Okay, so anything that was labeled text, you'll see it in black. You can't click into it, you can't drill into it to look at more information. Anything that's these single instances or multi-instances, you'll be able to dig into it. And this is probably not a good example, but you'll be able to further drill into it and see more information in the tenant in it. Okay, I showed what I wanted to show there. So let's go ahead and create a custom report, and then we'll be able to walk through a little bit more information, and then we could go ahead and continue tomorrow with calculated fields and more of the advanced stuff. So Ramesh, just to go back to one thing, did that whole temporary report make sense? And you saw, I know I was talking about something else, but I brought up that, what is it called? The task delete temporary definition, and you saw, right? Like if you have, let's say I created that temporary report, and then I want to go ahead and delete, right? Because by just saying that it's a temporary report, it's not doing anything. It's not like specifically deleting it from the system, which is really important. Over here, I can say like, okay, I want all the temporary definitions that are in the tenant to get deleted, right? Okay, so let's go to this advanced stuff. Scroll down, the report rule. Yes.
What is the difference between the data source and data source filler?
Where did you see that? Oh, so we're only looking at the further, like, so you have the top level data source. So right now over here, I'm looking at all accesses the worker as its primary business object. And, you know, this is all, and then includes all active and terminated workers, right?
Mhm.
And then if I want to specifically filter down to just the terminated worker, I can go ahead and do that with that.
Oh,
So it's just getting at the population you want, really. Okay, so let's go ahead and just do that. And then let's see, enter a date. We deleted. This is after the current date. Great. I will put this, and let's see if we're still able to run it tomorrow. Cool. Just remind me, I wrote it down, and then we'll see. Run it. Okay. Remind me, Ramesh, tomorrow. Are you going to be on the call tomorrow?
yeah,
Okay. All right. Okay, so that takes care of that. And let me make sure I didn't want to talk about anything else. Okay, let's go ahead and create. So I think this might have been the piece that I confused you guys on, or maybe just Sriram on, is yes, you can have these delivered reports, and of course, like again, hoping that it's just a starting off point or it meets most of your use case, and then you could copy it if you want to, right? And I know there was a so Sriram, like what you were saying, let's look at, for instance, maybe workload. Right? I can get at all the data sources that are there. You get the description, you get to see built-in prompts, and we'll go through that in a bit. Security groups, the category, what else? Let's see. The data source filter, and then their description. Which one were we just looking at? We were looking at terminated employees. This one that we were looking at earlier. Right, this was the business object, I think that was on there. Worker data.
Zaran,
Yes.
report, if you want to save this to your local, is that possible?
Sorry, you're breaking up. I don't know if it's because of my connection. I didn't hear any of it.
Are you okay now?
Yes.
No, once you run this report, if you want to save it to your local disk, is that possible?
Local disk. So Workday has its own W drive where you can go ahead and save these reports to. If you want it to be saved to your kind of like to your machine, the way you would do that is export to Excel. And this is probably not a good one to do because it had 2000, but the way it looks like. Oh, I don't have maybe Excel on this machine. Okay, but that's the way. I should cancel. I don't know what this is. But that's the way you would do it: is export it to Excel and then save it. Is that what you were asking? Yes.
No, you can export to the Excel, but how will you get it to your local disk?
Like when you're saying local disk, I'm sorry, just your computer, right?
Yeah, my computer, yeah.
Yeah, so when you export it to Excel, you could save it in Excel and then it would save on your local machine. Yeah, once you say, like you do this export to Excel, it's telling you download, and then it'll ask, like, for me, everything probably by default just downloads to my download folder, and I would just open it and then just move it to wherever I wanted on my machine. Yeah. Okay. So that's that. So I answered your data source question. Let's go back to creating the custom report. So over here, let me go ahead and make sure. Hopefully I still have this tomorrow. Right now I'm going to do simple, but use hover text, that's good. Okay, so I'm just going to read this, but a simple report provides a straightforward user interface. Most of the time, I'm not using simple. I'll just go ahead and use advanced, and simple will only be like, for whatever reason, I need to just create something really straightforward. I need to stick to one business object, one data source, not do anything too crazy. But and we'll go through it. An advanced report provides a little bit more features, and you'll get to see that in a little bit. But this HCM course, like there's many things over here as you saw, but 95% of the time, you're just going to be sticking around here, and it'll be, if you're looking to become a reporting expert, and this is really kind of like your wheelhouse, there is a lot more training, and just like you saw, a lot more information on community that allows you to kind of play around with these things. But what we'll be covering is simple and advanced. We already talked about this temporary report. And then optimize for performance. It's index data sources. And what that really means is, I mean, there's no real reason to really unselect this. You know, you can select non-index data sources. I feel like Workday is trying more and more to do index data sources, and all that means is like improve performance on them. But there's a lot of stuff that is available out, you know, you'll be limited if you have it selected to only index fields. But if you unselect it, you'll have the opportunity to have non-index data sources. And all that means is that your report, so when I'm saying performance, it's just about like how slow your reports are going to run. And if you know that your reports are going to run slow, and we'll talk about it maybe tomorrow, is you could always schedule these reports to run, and you don't need to be like waiting for the report output, right? Most of the time, like I just have it either run in the background or go ahead and schedule them if it's a pretty large report. So this is where the data source comes in. Hopefully I put down the right one. And, you know, again, you could run that data source report and just see what this all active and terminated workers is, or you just look here, right? Like, and it looks, you look at the description and just make sure that this is exactly what you're looking for. And see right here, it says for better performance, use indexed worker data source instead. So every time they're kind of trying to help, because I feel like when I look through community too, a lot of the issues that customers are facing is sometimes, some of the functionality isn't there, but some of the times it's also like around performance. Like we can get at the data, but everything is just a little bit slower, or it takes a little bit more time. So let's go ahead, click OK. And, this will automatically be filled in, right? Because this data source is related as part of the worker. I went ahead and selected simple, which just, and oh, I put the wrong, I did so many, like, so tomorrow I would have had trouble finding it. So let's go ahead and see. And then, these comments are kind of good. Like, if I'm creating something and I want and I'm going to share it out with several people, and I want them to know what this report is really about, because it's not kind of self-explanatory, I could go ahead and do that there. Let me just go ahead and add several fields here. So I want to put employee, oh, first I need to, yeah. And so you probably saw in the other report, like when it's an advanced one, because I could have several different data sources or business objects, there'll be additional fields. But since a simple one, you can only have one object as well as the data source. You can't really do anything here. And this column heading override is, instead of putting employee ID, really what I want it to be called is ID. I could do that. Let me just continue adding stuff first. And then at any point, right, like over here, so many things are popping up. What's the difference between this one, the worker's legal first, for given name, and then this one, I want to see what's the difference, the legal first name of the candidate. So this one is tied to the candidate and is in the recruiting area. This one is, just part of name, and this is probably the one that I'm looking for. I'll just go ahead and click that. And then Google lost. And I'm guessing this is the same one. So this is really helpful, these previews that you can get to on the related actions, to just make sure that you're pulling the right piece of data without having to run the report. I mean, you're still going to have to run the report and just make sure that the data looks correct, but this is a good way just to make, do a sanity check just to begin with. So I'll put worker type. And this is that instance, letting me know, is this person an employee or contingent? And, those node things that let you know if it's a simple or advanced field. What's the next thing I wanted to pull? Employee type. And here's that multi-instance, the employee type for the employee's primary position. And let's put hire date. Oops. And here's that date icon. So the worker's most recent hire date. Clicking. Oh, I should have clicked OK. But you have the run, which is going to go ahead and run for all the information in the tenant. And test is like, you just want to do a quick sanity check. And I believe with test, it's just the first, I thought it was first 10 items, but it just basically pulls back a few instances, just making sure you're getting at the right data, things kind of look correct and stuff. Let me go back to editing the report definition. And I want to just go through the other tabs. What I can say is, like, on the sort tab, what do I want to do? How do I want this to sort? So by default, what it's going to do, and what we just saw, is going to sort by the first column. So over here, you'll see, and it'll be in ascending order. But let's say I want to change that. And I want to take maybe the last name fields on the report, and I want to do last name ascending, right? And I could just do that. And then let's test again. And now, right, everything is in whatever which way, and it's gone ahead and sorted appropriately. And then the last thing I'm gonna show is the filtering. So, I can go ahead and dictate what I want to filter by. Maybe it's I want it to be maybe by supervisory org, which is kind of going to be interesting because I don't know which ones are getting pulled here. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's see if anything gets returned. So it'll pull everything. Let me just pick a number of these. Hopefully I'll get back something. Okay, I will just click OK. And then let's test. And I got back 9. So now it's specifically looking, right, for anyone that falls into those supervisory orgs. So any questions about just creating a simple report? I hope it shows that, yes, you can use the delivered reports, but if you want to just quickly spin up something, right? It's a very small ask. You can just do it this way. And as long as you don't have this being used somewhere where, like in an integration or anything like that, where it's kind of used this previously, you can go ahead and still delete it. You can edit it and all that stuff. Otherwise, you need to copy it if you're making any changes. Oh, and the other thing I need to talk about. Okay, so right now I can go ahead and run this, a simple report you can't share at the moment, but if it's an advanced report, you can. But right now, I'm the only person that's going to be able to run this report because I own this report. That's the ownership. I don't know if it shows you here. Yeah, it doesn't show you the owner, but you know, let's say I just needed to, like, I'm the report expert or whatever, and it's really a different functional user or an admin that needs to use this report and stuff like that, or I no longer need this report right now, and I really need somebody else to take a look at this. I could transfer ownership to that specific user. So the way you do that, cancel, is transfer ownership. And then I could specifically specify who the new owner will be of this report. And then going forward, they're the only ones that are going to be able to access this report. I no longer will have access to this report. And it'll look very different when it's an advanced report.